Hey everyone, and welcome to Money Moves for Teens. My name is Talia Levy, and in this podcast, I will be talking about business, entrepreneurship, and of course, money. I hope you take something away from this episode and enjoy. If you're a teenager listening to this episode, I want to let you know that now is the time to start saving for retirement. I know it sounds crazy, but there is one main reason why doing so is a good idea, and that reason is time. You are still young, which means your money has more time to grow. This episode, I'm going to talk all about traditional IRA and Roth IRA retirement accounts. In my 18th episode, I introduced these accounts as well as the topic of retirement savings as a whole. That episode has a lot of great information in it, but there are some details about each of the plans that I didn't mention in the episode, which is what I'll be covering today. There are still really important points I made that week though, so if you stay until the end, I'll give you the timestamps of when I suggest you go back and listen to those key points from that episode. And finally, before I begin, as I did my last two episodes, I'm going to start off by talking about the importance of saving. Why do we even need to put money aside for retirement? Well, the average age a person retires is at 62 years old. The average life expectancy of a person is 79 years old, and that number is slowly increasing every year because our technology is always advancing. But just taking those two numbers between the time you stop working and the time of your passing, you still have to provide for yourself financially for 17 years. You can't do that just by scraping the coins off of your car floor. That's hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars we're talking about. To continue paying for your food, medication, utilities, and more, you'll need money. You will need a large amount of money saved for retirement because you will have many years you still need to support yourself without your normal income, and you want to be prepared. And starting now will help you out greatly when doing so. Before I begin talking about traditional and Roth IRAs, I'll explain what I'm covering first. I'm going to give a description for each, and I'll state the pros, the tax treatment, maximum and minimum contribution limits, withdrawal rules, and any other requirements associated with setting up and having the accounts. And by no means am I giving tax advice. The first account I'm going to cover is called a traditional IRA. There are several kinds of IRAs, and those letters stand for individual retirement accounts or arrangements as they're legally named by the IRS or the Internal Revenue Service. Different than the 401k and 403b accounts offered when you work for a company, IRAs can be opened by anyone. They're not set up through any employer. And that's the first pro to this vehicle. No matter your job, you can open a traditional IRA. These kinds of accounts are what will enable you to start saving for retirement as a teenager. The second pro is that traditional IRA fees are much lower than 401k and 403b fees. The third pro is that there are many investment options in a traditional IRA. You will almost always have more options through this account compared to a 401k or 403b. And because those plans are chosen by the company, you have no say over really what investment options you receive compared to the IRAs, which you can open and assess the different options yourself. In a traditional IRA, you don't pay taxes on the money going in, but you do pay them when you withdraw or take the money out. This means you avoid income tax when you put money in, but when you withdraw money to live off of in retirement, the money gets taxed as regular income for your tax bracket. The maximum traditional IRA contribution limit is $6,000 for those under 50 years of age and $7,000 if you're over 50. There is no minimum contribution amount for this account. You can withdraw the money from these accounts at age 59 and a half. If you try to take money out before that time, you will be taxed at 10%, and the government requires you to start withdrawing money by age 72. The main requirement to open a traditional IRA is that you need to be making earned income. The website Investopedia says, according to the Internal Revenue Service, or the IRS, earned income includes wages, salaries, bonuses, commissions, tips, and net earnings from self-employment. So if you're making money as a babysitter, tutor, mall employee, etc., you can start putting money into an IRA. Now I'm going to talk about Roth IRAs. Since this is another type of individual retirement account, this account and the previous one I talked about will share many similarities, but there is one main difference. That difference is how your money gets taxed, and it's basically the opposite of a traditional IRA. Your money is taxed on the way into the account, but when you get to retirement, you can withdraw the money completely tax-free. Soon, I'll tell you all why I and many others believe this is the best type of retirement account for teens to start saving in. Once again, traditional and Roth IRA pros are similar. They can be opened by anyone, there are low fees associated with the account, and you receive many investment options. The maximum Roth IRA contribution limit is $6,000 for those under 50 and $7,000 if you're over 50. There is no minimum contribution limit for this account. You have to wait until you're 59 and a half to withdraw the money in this account, otherwise you'll be taxed at 10%, and you must withdraw money by age 72. And like the last account I talked about, you need earned income to begin contributing to a Roth IRA account. If you would like ideas as to how you can start making earned income, I have a number of episodes out that include many job ideas for teenagers specifically. Those episodes are numbers 2, 3, 11, and 12. Now, I'll tell you why a Roth IRA is the best option for teenagers. As teens, you're most likely not pulling in six figures every year and are usually on a beginner salary. That means you're paying little, if any, income tax. So at this stage in your life, when you're not making enough money to create a huge tax burden on your paycheck, why not choose the option where you pay those taxes now, meaning you don't have to later? I'm also assuming you all will want to continuously earn more money every year, but what that comes with is higher tax payments. I suggest talking to your parents about how they might open a custodial Roth IRA account for you so you can begin saving for retirement today. Now, I'm going to break down some numbers to really show you all how starting to save now will help you out so much in the future. For this numbers experiment, I'm going to assume you're making $60,000 a year, which is close to the median income for adults. Yes, I know this is probably way more than you're making currently, but this number is assuming you're making less now and will make more than the median later down the road. It's just an average I'm going to go by. To run these numbers, I'm using Dave Ramsey's investment calculator, which you can find on the web as well as in my description down below. So if you're making $60,000 a year, that's $5,000 a month. And let's assume you're putting aside 10% of that amount towards retirement, which totals $500 per month. You're starting at age 15 and you're retiring at age 62. And the last statistic we have to add is, of course, the annual return percentage on your money over the course of your working years. For our experimental purposes, Investopedia.com says adjusted for inflation, the historical average annual return is around 7%, so that's the percentage we'll use. So you're saving all this money from age 15 to 62, and if you factor all of those numbers in, you would have $2,193,214 saved for retirement. Think about that. Now, I'll compare the almost $2.2 million you would make starting to save at 15 versus starting at age 25. Keeping all the same stats, excluding your starting age, which is now 25, you would have $1,048,272 saved for retirement. That's what a 10-year difference will get you if you wait, $1,144,942 less. And when looking at the stats I used, of course some people retire later or choose to contribute a lot more than 10% of their monthly income towards retirement, but there is still a common theme. If you start earlier, you will end up with more money later. This can mean many different things for your future depending on who you are and what goals you have. You might choose to retire early, or as you get older, you may not have to put as much money into your savings every month compared to your peers. There are many positive things that can stem from starting to save early for retirement. I definitely recommend listening to my 18th episode because I go into further detail on the topic of retirement savings. I do talk about things in that episode that I covered here, so I'll give you some timestamps that you will find more helpful if you don't want to hear repeated information. I talk about Social Security at 1 minute 55 seconds. I explain how tax brackets work at 4 minutes and 38 seconds. I explain how your money actually grows in a retirement account at 6 minutes and 12 seconds. That's a timestamp I really do recommend you listen to if you aren't aware of how it works already. I cover how fees associated with retirement accounts work at 10 minutes and 19 seconds. And lastly, I explain how crazy the numbers can get in a fun, more relevant experiment at 18 minutes and 56 seconds. That's another interesting point that I think will be really helpful. You're more than welcome to listen to the whole thing, but if you just want the key takeaways that weren't in this episode, there you go. I hope this episode opened your eyes to a new topic and inspired you to start saving for retirement today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to this week's episode and learn something new. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions through my Twitter at MoneyMovesForTeens or through my Instagram at Talia.Simone_. If you decide to follow, you will be notified every time I release a new episode, and I do frequent polls about my podcast so you all can be part of my podcast decisions, such as choosing episode topics. If you are more of a visual learner, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel where I create animations for these episodes. It's the same great information, just in a video form. If you would like to continue building on what you learned this episode while supporting my podcast, in my descriptions I always have an outline and discussion guide. You can also go to buymeacoffee.com/tallylevy and access them through the shop section of my site. Print out the guides for your favorite episodes and talk about them with friends and family. Also, if you like Money Moves for Teens, be sure to give a rating and share it with those who will benefit from the information. I hope to see you next week. Bye!